you're gonna have to do things that don't scale, and you gotta be consistent. I remember Colin was talking to me, asking for some advice about kicking off for the first, and I'm just like, set a cadence that you can realistically hit, show up each time, have the same people show up each time if they want to come, and you're gonna have to do things that don't scale.
We recently got to sit down with Terry, Brett, and Colin to dive deep into the art of building meaningful communities. All three share their strategies for creating quality connections, the importance of in-person events, and why some inefficiencies are actually essential to creating an authentic community experience. Whether you're just starting to build your audience or looking to deepen the engagement with your existing community, this conversation offers practical wisdom on creating spaces that provide genuine value and connection. This video is part of a 3-part series, so you can watch the other 2 in the link in the description, or we'll link them at the end. Let's dive in, and I hope you enjoy this conversation.
Who do you ignore, and who do you bring closer?
I want to hear your answer to this.
Yeah, it's because you have a lot of... Yeah.
To this day, I still go through the guest list manually. Even when there's 600 to 1,000 people RSVP to an event, I'll go through it manually. So I did this, our South by event, we actually had 1,200 people RSVP. And I went through manually and checked out everyone who was coming. Now this one, we could have been more open with it, so no problem. But when I'm in New York and I'm working with a brand that's sponsoring my event, maybe it's Teachable, maybe it's Notion or something, there's an element that I want to curate so that 1, the brand is like, okay, there's a high caliber group of people here, and 2, that when you show up to my event and you turn around and you run into someone, that person you run into is someone worth, meeting. Whether they're at your level, just getting started or something, but there's some value to be exchanged there versus it being someone random that just wanted a free drink. And so what I'll do is I'll basically go through and I ask a couple questions when there's an application to basically come to the events, name, email, what do you do, blah, blah, blah. And I ask, why do you want to come to this event? And if people fill that out, then I'm like, they care about wanting to come to this, especially not just like networking or like they say something, but also like I'll take a look at people's online presence, which is why we go back to being online is important. You have a strong presence online, or like I can see kind of what you're up to, I get a better vibe. And like whether or not it's, I manually go through, it's always me. And there's certainly people that I might miss that should be there, but frankly due to capacity or just like me glossing over it, I'll forget them. And it's like, it's nothing personal. I am just like curating this community. The community is relying on me to curate the environment that they've come to expect. And the brand has an expectation in terms of who I promised will be there and the types of people. And so I'll go through all of that manually. And I don't plan on stopping that because I want to make sure that every person in that room, it should be in there. And there's some people who are like, I'm on the fence about, but I'm like, I want them to come. They had a good response that they said. And then people are always surprised when I meet them and I'm like, oh, you're Steve, I saw you do the bird stuff. He's like, yeah, how do you know? I'm like, I go through every single person. My girlfriend's like, come to bed. And I'm like, hold on, I'm going through the guest list.
Makes you a great host. I think also in this social media world, what I was thinking about is that is such an intentional inversion of the relationship that I have with my audience. Because when I post a video, right, I've got near 250,000 on Instagram, right? It's like Instagram is choosing for me who to show that video to, who to show that piece of content to. I have absolutely no say, right? Other than my following and hashtags, whatever they're scraping off that video. That's why I have a lot of respect for what you're doing with my events now. I've only put on 1 or 2, but I'm doing the same thing where I'm going through a much smaller list, but I'm going through every single application to make sure that I'm exercising my right to choose who gets to be in that room. Because if you view every single piece of content I've ever posted, I've never chosen who gets to show up on those videos, right? But with these events, I get to choose. And so I think that's a right that you should definitely be exercising.
Your newsletter too, your newsletter is important. Yeah, true. Gonna keep emphasizing that. Newsletters, community, and using all of your other social as a top of funnel to those things gets the right people, at least the more or less right people filtered in. If someone's signing up for your newsletter, it's like, they wanna go deeper with you. They come to your event, they wanna go deeper with you.
Terry, I feel like you're one of the more direct people with your audience, so I was curious
I mean, on my end, I'm looking for people that are willing to put in the work. Because I was an educator for so long, people are just like lazy sometimes. Like, how to become a digital marketer by next week? And I'm like, it took me 10 years, so I don't know. Yeah. Certain like career pathways, people think you can just like jump into it and you know better than most. Like, people don't ask that of pilots. Like, how can I start flying this thing next week? You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm looking for people who are willing to put in the work, but like the deep work. If you want me to help you with your keynote or your storytelling, what is your story? Don't tell me about the time like you forgot your laptop at work and you had to figure, like that ain't gonna work, you know what I mean? So there are certain people that I won't work with because they bore me. Not because they're boring people, because they're not willing, for whatever reason, to not tell their full story. And I'm like, I get that, I respect that, but I'm also tired a lot, so I can't be bored working with you. So having that filter up attracts the right people, it attracts the wrong ones, and what I'm looking for is for me to help them and then they have an impact. So there's this woman, Cynthia, she actually lives here in Queens. I was coaching her for a while and she made enough money to actually move her grandparents into their own apartment in Queens. And I'm like, that's legacy, right? At the same time, I've also done workshops at Walmart down in Bentonville, Arkansas. Great company, they didn't really give a shit though, right? So I'm like, I'm trying to find the people that are bought in, that really want to do the work, and I can feel like a win through their wins later on.
Can I just add one point there? In addition to who you want in your element, also choosing which elements you want to enter into, I think is interesting. So like living here in New York, there's always so many opportunities, there's so many events going on and everything, and I've started to get a bit more strict in terms of where I devote my time. And there was like something going on this morning that I chose not to go to because one, I was really tired, and two, I was like, I need to do a little bit of work before this, but like just choosing like, are things worth your time? I think Sahil Bloom came out with, you know Sahil Bloom? So he came out with an book, The 5 Types of Wealth, or I forget the name of it. But he has like these really good frameworks in there, and one of them is about like time wealth and like where to devote your time. And so it's an interesting framework. Can't think of it off the top of my head, but thinking about like, should I go to this thing next week, yes or no? And as you start to get more refined as a creator and as an entrepreneur,
As a parent.
And as a parent, I'm talking from a non-parent standpoint, so a little bit different here. But yes, you start to devote, is this worth my time? Is it not? And like you chose to go to South by Southwest this year, and I'm curious, what went through your mind to be like, why should I go to this? Or maybe it was like a test run or something. So I was just also interested to think about the other end of where do you enter in? What's your criteria?
I mean, one of my big beliefs that I've talked about in some of my videos is this concept of compound networking, right? I get all these questions whenever I do stuff on networking that tells me that person is viewing networking as something that's transactional, right? If I meet Brett, what can you do for me today? What can Terry do for me today, right? And so I think of the long tail of that and the compression of like, in what other week can you meet Scott Galloway and Kenya Barris and Issa Rae and all these people and learn from them, right? May have the opportunity to even run into them. The green rooms are right next to, like, you run into people all the time, right? And to be able to compress and condense these people that I think are doing incredibly cool shit all around the world into one weekend, even if I don't get anything out of it, I had no goals, to be honest with you. I didn't have a certain dollar amount. My wife's gonna watch this and I'm gonna have another conversation to have when I get home, but like, I didn't have anything. I was explicitly looking, but like, if you're doing cool shit, I wanna touch your hand, I wanna connect with you, I wanna learn more about it, right? Like that was really my only goal.
It's like 2018, I see Damon John at South by Southwest. I had a great exchange with him, so on and so forth, took a picture, bam, gone, right? And then like 4 years later, maybe 5 years later, I had a chance to interview him. And we're talking about, Shark Tank and all stuff, so on and so forth. And I wanted to try to progress the conversation, but I didn't want to be too thirsty. You know what I mean? I'm like, how can I like partner with this guy? A year later, I interview him again. He invites me and my daughter to this event that he did at the Apollo. So we're hanging out with him, Whoopi Goldberg, like all these random people. And I'm like, maybe now's the time you should ask for something. I didn't though. I held back at this, trying to be cool or whatever. Last week, I'm doing an event for one of my partners, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, Damon John's trying to get a hold of you.
No.
And I'm like, I'm not that hard to get a hold of. I'm like, how hard has he been trying? But again, this is going back like 6-7 years now that I waited. So that strategic patience benefits you as a creator, because sometimes what just happens to you, like the big brand deals you get, they're like years in the making. It's like you met that one person at one time and the one thing who introduced you to somebody else. And if you're not thirsty, if you ask people like about themselves instead of like what you're trying to sell, that's how you form those partnerships.
So the patience is so important. I worked at Teachable for a year and a half or so and building that relationship before we formed something long term. And same with Notion. We're doing a bigger event next week, but like it took me so long for them to finally get involved. But like I maintained contact. When I would see their people at an event, say hi, what's up? Just be friendly. Play the long game. Is like you can't emphasize that enough in this space that we're in. And again, that's why if you want a fast exit, this isn't really the place to be.
And then the one thing I'll say is, in all of our cases, I'm sure the content we create is the invisible hand in that as well. Because when you're not at those events with Damon, he's seeing the stuff you're putting out, right? When people aren't at your events, they're seeing the newsletters. And so that's the invisible. It's keeping you top of mind where other people sort of fall to the wayside.
Or you throw them a little like on their post so they see your name. They're like, I should have an email to reply to them.
Correct. So I did want to wrap up because there's all these conversations about AI or just in general, the internet is on a trend to compress information. In entertainment and stuff, that's had its effect. People are just trying to be funnier, faster, or more extreme, the Mr. Beasts of stuff. But in the education realm, there's a beauty to compressing the information for access to it, and AI is especially like the steps you need when you need them. But I still feel like it negates the learner, and education is freaking messy. And you kind of teed it up wonderfully to my question, which is like, what are the messy or time-consuming parts of your business that are non-negotiable into the future?
I'd say it's mindfulness, to be honest, because the majority of my content, it's stories based on things I've experienced or done myself. So today when I was at the gym, I was like benching or doing whatever. And I'm like, I took a video of it. So I'm like, okay, what's the story? I can bench this much money. Okay, that's boring, right? Or bench this much weight. That's boring. The real story was how I've been doing mobility work on my shoulders to make sure that when I am getting in heavier weight, that I can maintain it and not hurt myself, right? Because it happened for years and years and years. So the mindfulness there is like, hey, you have to build up these small habits that help you build, get these big outcomes or whatever. Like I'll work on the story. But then what I do is I dump that information to ChatGPT and I'm like, make this sound good. So it's still my story. You'll still see a video of me benching, so it feels personalized. But I'm like, I got to get my kids ready to school. You write this shit, I'll be right back. And I'll hit post. So it's the mindfulness that AI will never be able to take away from you, because it's not following you around all day thinking, okay, what's the story here?
Just to add to that point, I'm very similar. I use Claude from writing my newsletter primarily. And I've created like a Claude project that has all of my past newsletters. So it knows how I talk, it connects things. We were talking about this at South by Southwest. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, but yeah, it does require your mindfulness, your story, so that there is an authentic story element to it. And sometimes I've seen Claude like write something, and I'm like, I've never done that, remove that. Here's what I actually did. And then what I love to do is I'll ramble. I'll just ramble and just have my mind flow, and what the AI does is help structure the thoughts. Now, there's the argument to be made, well, that's the whole point of writing, it helps you out there. It's like, well, look, I'm trying to be efficient, but I'm also trying to storytell in a unique way. I'm trying to make use of all the creative tools that are out there. And it's up to me to end up having a final piece that I think this captures what I've been trying to explain. It has myself infused in it. But that, and that could be tedious to an extent, but it's also being more efficient. So I think it's really interesting, the mindfulness element you said, and also trying to find a story for benching. And you're like, well, I'm doing shoulder mobility because small things need to lead to something bigger. And that's interesting to think about.
Earlier in my creator journey, when I first started to experience some real excitement and engagement on my Instagram account, I flirted with a couple AI auto DM responder tools, right? And I thought I was going to be so smart because I was getting asked similar questions a lot of the times. And I quickly ran into some very big problems because I would get DMs from people who were young parents from underrepresented backgrounds that had just lost their job, and they wanted to know what to do next. And the very next message that would come less than a second later was be like, hey, if you want to schedule a call with me, you got to click on this link. By the way, it's $80, And so I think I quickly realized that I can't take away in a large part the way I interact with my audience. And so I took out all of that stuff. And now if someone DMs me or someone leaves a comment, I would rather have less engagement or you see me less on my videos if I don't have the time to actually be in there responding to people and actually having that conversation with them. So I've actually pulled back a lot of the AI I use in terms of how I interact with my audience. But I'm doing a very similar thing that y'all are doing, where it's it's my story and it's my experience. But yes, sometimes I'm not the best at wrapping up a video in a really spicy way, or writing some of my longer form newsletters or stuff that I've done in the past. So I'm definitely using that. But I think for me, how I engage with my audience is I love the phrase you use for it, but that's the messy work that I don't think I'll ever sort of offload.
I do want to get to something deeper too, because you're all talking about what AI can't replace. I think you already answered it, which was you will always review this thing. That is the least efficient way to go through a guest list.
I was curious. Now it's doing things that don't scale.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
In a year or so, maybe it's someone else, or there is an AI that can do it well, but still, yeah.
Yeah. But I was curious with you two, beyond what it can't replace, are there just non-negotiable inefficiencies that make what you do what it is? I know mindfulness takes more time, so maybe that is still the answer.
I mean, I won't make a video if I know if the lesson is there, but the story isn't, I guess. And so it's I'll never make a video again, I guess, because I used to do this all the time. But the how-to stuff you were speaking about earlier in our conversation, right? I will never show up on a social platform again and just tell someone how to do something. I recently partnered with an incredible brand in the nutrition and like supplement space, right? And the story I opened that video with is I was late on the concept because I was thinking about how I was gonna get to it, and it was a really moment of vulnerability for me because I was working at a startup in a previous phase of my career, and I was putting in all these crazy hours doing all this stuff for the business, investing in my career, and I ended up with a migraine that put me in the hospital. I couldn't recognize my wife in the room sitting right next to me, and I was just like, I was completely out of it. It took me out of work for like a week. That was actually the decision that like made me to start seriously investing in content as something that could be a bit more sustainable for me, because I was completely out of whack with my work-life balance at that point. That's the story I used to set up how I realized at that point I had like medically low levels of like magnesium or something, right? And so one of the 75 essential nutrients and vitamins in the supplement pack was magnesium, and that was sort of the way into that video. But I had to get comfortable enough to tell that story before I could say, okay, here's how I think I could show up, right? I'm not gonna sit behind a desk and just say, let me talk to you about this supplement brand that's paying me to put the bottle right here, right? And so for me, it's like, if I don't have a story, I don't have a video. It's not enough to just know a networking tip or to know a resume tip. It's like, what is the story that's actually going to relate this to something me and my audience is going through?
I had a better response, but I was so trapped in your story.
As he tells us.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate that.
I'll say this, and this might be like a cop-out answer, but like AI cannot define your identity for you. And I think it's dangerous when people try to do so, because they'll say, I am a consultant who serves this audience, help me write content, blah, blah, right? So what I do when I work with my clients is I have a series of prompts that helps you identify your true identity, right? Like, who are you? What do you care about? What motivates you? And then from there, you get a more clear profile of who you are, not just how you want to show up online, but how you want to show up in life. And to your earlier point, that's why you have to dump all these stories about yourself into AI. Like, the time in junior high when you forgot your lunch bag, like whatever it was, because the more it knows about you, it's like, okay, here's who you are as a person. And when it does give you information, it'll be more aligned with who you are intuitively, because it already has that in place. So people try to outsource their personality to AI, and that's scary because artificial intelligence is only useful if you start with natural intelligence. But if you're so lazy, you're like, I don't know, bro, just give me option B. Like, you're gonna sound like a robot because a robot wrote your shit. So the more of yourself that you put into this in these tools, the more you'll get out, and it won't feel cringy. It'll just feel very convenient.
Yeah, that's right. It's so funny, and we experience this as Teachable, like the words that mean things that are deep to humanity, like community, then become a feature, and it gets really confusing what the hell is what. But as community builders, however you're doing it, just like as a last thought for the day, looking at this future, showing up as yourself, regardless of AI, what's your top advice to like building a meaningful community, be it online or otherwise, as we go into this kind of uncharted territory that we're all navigating?
I would just kick it off saying, you're gonna have to do things that don't scale, and you gotta be consistent. I remember Colin was talking to me, asking for some advice about kicking off for the first, and I'm just like, set a cadence that you can realistically hit, show up each time, have the same people show up each time if they want to come, and you're gonna have to do things that don't scale. You're gonna have to run around the block and get the FedEx poster board. Like, you're gonna have to find the scrappy location just to host the damn thing. And when I think back to the earlier days of Curating NYC, which still keeps me so humble, and even today, the humbleness with what I'm building, it sometimes distracts me from even what I've built, is the fact that there's so much manual hard work and mental work that goes into it, and you're still doing the things that don't scale. So if you want to build community, I really think it comes down to recognizing that it's not going to come easy, and also you need to be consistent. I can't just be like, I'm going to do this one thing and peace out. It's like, just keep showing up, playing the long game.
I'll go next, so you're probably going to feel stronger. I would say this. I would say, this is going to be counterintuitive, but I would explore other options first. Before becoming a community builder, I would explore other options. Maybe you should be a course creator or a speaker or an accountant. I don't know.
Or it doesn't need to be I would say it doesn't need to be intentional. Like, I wasn't like, I'm going to be a community builder. It just kind of happens from starting something else, really.
Yeah. So just think to yourself, okay, like, here's my life. There's all these things I can do. Here's one option, but what are the others? Because you might realize, you know what, I want to be a community builder because all these guys seem cool and it seems like their thing, and I want friends and all this stuff. Then you realize this is actually hard. So there's not like a true why behind the what. I know it sounds corny, but you will become bitter, you'll become frustrated, your community's gonna suck. So just think, okay, of all the options available, why do I want to do this? Why is this how I wanna make my highest contribution to the world? And if you still land on being a community builder, then we got some more advice for you right over here. So
I appreciate the tee up, Terry. I appreciate that. I think one thing that's become big for me as I've scaled my online presence and am now trying to build this in-person one is you have to have anti-goals. You have to know what you don't want, who you don't want in the room, where you don't want the event to be held, what you don't want to grow to, because the worst thing that can happen to someone, I think, is to have a viral moment, right? Because then you feel almost trapped in that frame of reference. And I've had that happen in my own life where it's like, let me do this thing that's an easy thing to do that will get me a lot of views. And then it changes the expectations from your audience. And so I've experienced that in the digital realm. And so when I do these events, my first event, I could have had 300 people there. There were 45. And that's because I intentionally chose a venue that was smaller. I intentionally went through and said no to a lot of people or pushed them into an email or some sort of wait list, right? And I was very, very slow and intentional because I knew what I didn't want it to be, and I didn't want it to grow into something that I felt like I had lost control of too quickly, or people were there for the wrong reasons, right? Like it's not an influencer meetup. Like you're not there to come hang out with me. Like we're all in this event together. And we're all trying to get to a deeper understanding of where we came from and where we want to go professionally and personally and emotionally. Like that's the goal. And I had anti-goals. And so I think that like you have to know what you don't want it to be as well. You can't just have this ideal state in your head.
I love that. I think that's a great place to wrap up. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
We'll talk to you soon, Chance. Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Oh, air handshake.
Yeah,
Terry, Brett, and Colin are all an incredible example of creators who understand that building meaningful communities requires intention, patience, and willingness to do things that don't scale. By focusing on quality over quantity, being selective about who they invite into their spaces, and creating genuine connections through both online and offline experiences, they've built communities that provide real value to their members and sustainable businesses for themselves. This approach reminds us that in an increasingly AI and automation-driven world, human connection remains the most valuable currency for creators. Don't forget, this video is part of a 3-part series that you can watch linked here, or you can catch the full episode on our podcast linked in the description below. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you in the next one.